for those that are new, we run CRO PROS in Auckland, and also we're doing it in Sydney, but we're doing in Auckland normally every 2 months, but we couldn't get these amazing speakers over last month, so that's why we kind of moved it to this month, and then we'll do the next one in September, right? Around September. But just for you that are not familiar with Catchy, we basically New Zealand's and Australia's leading conversion rate optimization specialist, do a lot around personalization and UX area as well, and really focusing on kind of the website, turning website traffic, whether that's mobile, desktop, and app, in paying customers and qualified leads. And really important, like the last bit, we do a lot of kind of with partnerships. So we work with Optimizely, VWO, but also AB Tasty, and recently became Google Analytics certified partners and Google 360 authorized resellers, which have been really good as well. Great. About tonight's speakers. So we're really excited because we actually have 2 speakers over from Oregon, the United States, which apparently is the same as New Zealand. It's New Zealand of the US. Absolutely. So this is kind of 6 months a year here, 6 months per year over there. Will be a good combination. Really excited to have them over here tonight to talk about not so much about the social login, but about that the Facebook login is much more than just kind of that button that you click and then just have a social login. So it's beyond that. And actually talking about a customer identity and access management, which I don't know a lot about as well, but I'm really excited to hear more about that because you're also going to talk a little bit more about the impact of that on conversion rates going forward, because obviously it's easy to log in and sign up, but then what's the effect on conversion rates going forward, So very excited, and thank you very much for coming over tonight.
You can imagine what our vote is on the tagline. Conversion, yeah.
You can vote as well.
Cool, thanks. All right, hopefully I can do this. All right, I'm just gonna hold, no, that's silly. I'll hold it. All right. All right, we'll do this. So, thank you everybody. We just, we flew in today from Australia, but I think we're doing all right. No jet lag. Yeah, I'm staying the weekend because I love it here. So I'm Erin Bennett. I'm the Janrain account executive that is lucky enough to handle this part of the world, the envy of my company, seriously. So kind of, again, representing Janrain and get to work with not only great customers in this part of the world, but also wonderful partners. So kind of hence why we're here. And Richard, don't worry about speaking into my mic, but yeah, if you want to, go ahead.
So I am Richard Probst. I also work with Erin and Janrain. Is anybody familiar with Penn and Teller? Yes, no. Raise your hands. You've heard of Penn and Teller, magician? How about Simon and Garfunkel? You've heard of Simon and Garfunkel? Yes, certainly. So Penn and Teller is an interesting act. They work on Las Vegas, and Penn is a very charismatic, very vocal, very active speaker, and Teller is a very quiet guy that sits in the corner and does things. So Erin is Penn.
I don't know.
And I am Teller. So
maybe not right now, but I like it.
That's just how it goes.
Yeah,
or
good stuff.
And
he's
Simon.
So the technical brains behind the operation. We'll put it that way.
So
right there.
I operate the laptop.
Yeah. So good. He's my clicker. So we chose to do this Mythbusters thing just because we thought it was funny. I hope you know a little bit about it, but just kind of, again, we thought it would be applicable to try to dispel the myths about Facebook, log on, social registration, so on and so forth. So we'll talk a little bit about that. The thing that a lot of our customers and other companies that we work with find that this is great, enabling the user to log on, authenticate, making it very easy. But again, we'll talk about the different virtues of that, what to do with the data, some pretty interesting case studies in a very, diverse markets and verticals. And then we're just going to touch a little bit about security and privacy, because I know that's top of mind for a lot of people and at the core of our business or customer identity management in general. So we're just going to go just roll through this. And our first social login, I know everybody has probably used it or seen it. And this is the general opinion of what social login is. And I know you guys probably know this, but just want to kind of point it out. People feel they're very apprehensive about social logon. And this is definitely a myth that it's social logon in general, very permission-based data. You're not just giving, when you use social logon Facebook, you're not giving a brand access to everything that you've ever done on Facebook. You're giving them very specific criteria. So it's very specific information that you've given them permission to have. So it's a good thing to kind of keep that in mind. And it's also an interesting thing, the business that we're in. We noticed that the older population, and I'm going to say older in this regard is, we'll just say 35 to 40 and older. 45, I don't know, whatever it is. They're a little more apprehensive,
Include yourself, but not me.
Yeah, right. But the younger generation of that, they don't have any problem with social logon. So it's kind of here to stay. So again, it's the data through social logon. It's very secure. It's very permission-based. In fact, companies are starting to realize that they don't want to be in the business of trying to organize and work with social logons or with traditional registration in a lot of capacities. It's actually more secure because people change their social profile, social passwords a lot. So it's actually more secure. The other thing to note, and this stat has been just growing over time, is that more and more social logon, people are starting to trust it. So this stat we've seen grow. We've been doing this since about 2005. We were the pioneers behind the concept of it. So the people are starting to trust it more and more. And it really is, talk about conversion rates. This is one of the key things. Being able to get somebody, take an anonymous user to the site, to your website's digital properties, and make it drop dead easy for them to convert into an authenticated known user. Again, it's leaps and bounds. I know in New Zealand in particular, Facebook is far and away really strong. But we do see with a lot of Australia and a lot of like global brands or have the brands that have global audiences, things like WeChat, huge. It is just through the roof. So if you have any sort of an international audience, WeChat, Latin America, any of that, different identity providers are very strong in different areas. So it's great to give your customers a really easy way to authenticate, no more usernames and passwords, but to the brand, really powerful payload of data that, again, the user is giving you permission to access. And this is data we could spend, it's 56 different fields of data that you could potentially ask for in Facebook alone. And these are things, not only demographic, pretty deep demographic information, but also things like psychographic information. I'm sure you probably know what that is, but it's what brands do you like? What sports teams do you like? What sports do you like to play? What pets do you have? So being able to take that information in a profile, add it to somebody's user profile, really powerful. And another use case of social logon is enabling somebody to log on with Facebook and using it to auto-populate one of those big registration forms that nobody loves to fill out, but taking as much data in those situations where you need to get the specific data through a registration form, populating a couple of fields of data from somebody's social profile is huge. Just it makes the registration process so much better. And then overall, really, the concept of taking an unknown user and converting them into a registered user participating with your brand, engaged with your brand, makes pretty big ROI. In a lot of cases, they tend to spend more money, they spend more time on your site, so on and so forth, and they return a lot more. So another piece of this, customer identity and access management. And this is kind of the bigger picture. And it's you'll probably start hearing about this more and more. You can think identity and access management, that's usually used underneath the I guess, inside the firewall for a lot of companies to identify and provide the ability for employees to go through systems that they're authenticated or have the ability to access. Well, think of that concept, but this concept for your consumers. So providing a centralized way to register your customers across your different data points, your digital properties, mobile, so on and so forth, growing what you know about them over time so you can use that data to be a much more personalized experience. So this is, again, you'll start hearing this more and more, and we call it SIAM is what the industry has coined it. Forrester and Gartner have both just recently developed practices around this concept. So it's good. There's all sorts of white papers and a lot of content that they're producing because they realize that this is going to be really important to large brands. So just a little bit, so kind of changing the topic of social logon, customer identity and access management. Do you want to talk about this one?
Sure. So,
you want to here we go.
Thank you.
You bet. Thanks.
We'll see if we can pick it up from my ear. So what about customer identity and access management is there? These are the drivers that we're going to talk about, and you have multiple channels and multiple ways in which your customer can interact with you. They can come through to you from a desktop or laptop. Mobile devices are increasingly popular, and you have to do something with mobile. There's gaming consoles, set-top boxes, all these different ways that your customer can experience you. And so the challenge is that to have a good customer experience, you need a single account to be able to work across all these channels, and a single account to be used in all the various properties that you have, whether they're websites or mobile applications. So this is a complicated problem, and in the past people have not focused on that, so you end up with accounts here and accounts there and accounts here and data all over the place, and it's a giant mess. And so here's this space in which you can address those issues. So the drivers. Number one, a single view of the customer, which is something that's very important and becoming increasingly important to service our customers effectively and give them a great experience with our brand. We don't want them to be blind to their interaction with us just because we work in customer service and somebody else was in fulfillment or purchasing. So that plays into a unified customer experience or a consistent experience across all the different channels with your brand. They don't go to a shopping cart one place and then show up somewhere else and their shopping cart is empty. The conversion rate is something that's becoming increasingly important. And you know, if you're in e-commerce, shopping cart abandonment is something that you think about a lot. If you're doing anything else, registration abandonment is something that you're interested in addressing. Of course, security and privacy are at the top of your mind, and there have been events that have happened that have caused poor publicity for numerous brands and companies, and you don't want to be one of those. Finally, customer enablement is part of the digital business transformation. So rather than the customer always coming to you to service some things, enable them to be able to manage their own, manage some of those things on their own. And finally, developing a really individual, personal relationship with the customer and getting to know them on an individual basis. Much like what we did, hundreds of years ago before we had digital things and became mass markets. We're starting to see more companies interested in developing that relationship with them. So the opportunity, quote from Coca-Cola, one of our customers: "Today, information flows in many directions. Consumer touch points have multiplied, and the old one-size-fits-all approach has given way to precision marketing and one-to-one communications." So the question is, what are you going to do about that? Consumers really expect relevant brand experiences when they work with you. So rather than being an anonymous person or just another number in a demographic. We want to recognize who they are, what they like, give them a relevant offer based on what their location is. And that's the goal of this solution.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I know. Awkward. As part of this, on your desk, you'll actually see a business card, my business card. And it's just that this is everybody in our company, their business cards are completely different because it's the concept of using the social profile and this concept of single identity of your customer to get to know them better overall. And this is the kind of the crux of social logon and customer identity and access management, or CIAM. So again, amazing amount of payload of data that you can get from these different sources. And again, this concept, the overarching concept of that is single customer identity. And I think the key to this is literally being able to, the whole concept is being able to treat your customers like you know them on a one-to-one basis, no matter where they are in your entire ecosystem, your digital ecosystem.
In a way that's not creepy.
Yeah, that's key. That's key. And why this is hard. This is hard stuff. Because in most of the companies that we see or work with, they've got all this infrastructure already built, unless you're lucky enough to be a brand new company that has this great idea and it's just springing out of nothing. But across the top, all the various systems that a typical enterprise has, different profile sources that your customers are interacting with you on, and then on the right, all of those systems that you want to interact with your customer on. And this next slide is actually a literal data map of Philips when we first started talking to them. That is what it looked like for them to try to do business with their customers, to engage with their customers. Crazy, we call it the spaghetti slide. But the concept, that central concept of a user identity is critical. And then as part of that, registration, getting your customers, just as you were asking about optimization, conversion rates, getting your customers, providing them really clean, easy, comfortable ways to register, to gather more information about them over time. It's critical and it's hard. It's hard to do and it's hard to give customers a lot of reasons to engage with your brand. But it's absolutely key to, again, give customers the ability to move from that anonymous to that authenticated user. And there's all sorts of different pieces, complicated pieces of registration. And every once in a while we'll engage with a brand or a customer and they'll say, gosh, nobody's registering on my website. And you pull up the registration and it's like 3 pages having to go through to fill out a registration form. And so things like, there's best practices around that, around things like what we call progressive profiling, progressive permissioning, asking a little bit of data as you go through the relationship of your customer, the customer journey. So things like that. And then probably the most key piece of this for conversion and optimization on mobile. So I know Australia and New Zealand are at the forefront of the number of people that use mobile over the typical desktop is huge compared to the rest of the world. So mobile is another just key critical piece here, giving people really easy ways to register and making it reasons to engage. So mobile, making that process really easy. Again, this data that you're collecting be it through a Facebook logon, even things like being able to collect a user's Facebook friends, asking permission to do that. Lots of complicated data that most systems aren't developed. So these CIAM systems, the CIAM systems are purpose-built to be able to house a lot of that type of information that's real-time information, always changing. So very flexible in nature. And in addition to being able to get information, glean information off of a registration, most companies that we see have a lot of other data, silos of data, or other third parties of data that are being pulled in. So providing a really easy way to pull in both legacy data and other data sources. Hard, but very, very important to have that single view of your user so you know them and can treat them like you know them no matter where they're accessing your brand. Providing the ability, and I know this is probably critical to most brands, and this is again pretty hard, being able to see the data, pull the data together, see the data, but also segment the data and make it useful. Again, hey, let's take a look at our database I want everybody, Qantas is a great example customer. I want to understand everybody in my database that's a gold frequent flyer member that lives in Portland, Oregon, that loves dogs, motorcycles, and wine, that skis and wants to go to Fiji. Being able to pull that sort of information, segment it, and use it for these third-party systems that you either have or may have in the future makes it even more powerful and kind of the top of mind with most organizations. And these are everything from email like MailChimp and ExactTarget and those sorts of things, being able to connect that data to make that experience really personal with the user is more and more critical. And just getting back to that, unifying all of these data sources to create that single view of your customer. That's the basis of CIAM, Customer Identity Access Management. And we kind of talked a little bit about that, but being able to take the data, see the data, and utilize it is, I know Catchy and Optimizely, they can help in part of this process as well, but knowing what you want to do with that data can be hard. It's great to have that knowing what you're going into, but a lot of times, sometimes you need to start collecting the data to see it, to figure out, hey, this is a great campaign that maybe we should think about running. I'm going to play a quick video that we're hoping works, and we're hoping it's not super loud, but just click it. Tech guy. All right. Fingers crossed. Oh,
Coke Share a Coke campaign started in 2013, replacing the famous Coke logo with popular first names. In 2014, Coke raised the bar and allowed customers to register and order their own personalized Coke bottles online. Then, to activate their fans, Coke and their agency Mediacom partnered with Channel 4, one of the UK's most popular broadcasters. They created the first fully personalized TV campaign, seamlessly integrating customer information. The result was that each recipient saw their own name on a Coke bottle in the TV ad. The brand received a Silver Lion Award for WPP's Mediacom, and Channel 4 won Best Use of Data for Audience Buying at 2015 Media Week Awards. Channel 4 used its 4 on-demand customer profile data collected by Janrain's identity platform. So with a small amount of data, Channel 4 was able to deliver a personalized brand experience for millions of consumers. And they loved it. The social reach of #ShareACoke peaked at 11 million. The response on Twitter showed just how delighted customers were. They didn't just tweet though. Campaign awareness was up 17%, ad recall was 71%, and purchase intent increased by 24%. When you take big ideas and make them personal, new customer experiences become possible. In total, Mediacom created 4 million ad units, and Coke sold over 150 million personalized bottles. Unified customer data to create personalized customer journeys. That's identity-driven marketing, powered by Janrain.
Sorry, that was a bit of a pitch. Sorry about that. Anyways, pretty amazing example of being able to take just a little piece of data and use it to get to know your customers, make them feel very special. Pretty amazing use case. And we just got back from an event where a sports themed kind of sports fan event up in Melbourne, and they went through a lot of examples of something very, very similar, trying to engage with their sports fans. Amazing amount of technology and stuff that's coming down the road. It was pretty jaw-dropping. So we've got some cool things that are coming. So a couple of other just use cases I wanted to point out that some you're familiar with, some not. But SBS up in Australia, they had the same problem of, hey, we've got all of this data about all of our customers, but it's all in different places, and we need to have it centralized. We want to have this program called a connected customer, so we can see the customer but be able to use that data for all of these different campaigns and ideas and agencies that we have these great ideas for. Help us do that. That's the whole concept and point of this customer identity and access management concept. Again, the connected customer. And then being able to also take that information and say recommend content that they might be interested in. That was another big play that they're utilizing this for. We work with our CIAM, this concept, including social logon. We saw that a lot of companies, they were trying to build this themselves, and Richard will talk a little bit more about that. Trying to build this concept, but Qantas quickly realized, we don't want to be in this business. We want to focus on what we do really, really well. There's got to be somebody out there that can help with this or a concept of this. It was a crawl, walk, run on the security side of kind of trust to put this really critical stuff in somebody else's hands, to be able to register their customers, combine the data, and be able to utilize the data. So CIAM, super focused around security and data privacy, because trust me, they don't want to end up on the front cover of any magazine or a paper for that. So you'll start seeing, again, more of a kind of a refined experience, a user experience, more personalized experience over time with Qantas. Channel 4 we already kind of talked about, but these guys are really awesome. They, the UK based company, they are super funny, super witty, but really, really amazing how they communicate with their customers, their consumers, to have them exchange their trust for their data. So we've got all sorts of great use cases and white papers around how Channel 4 has created this really trusting environment with their customers. Great videos showing, here's what we're going to do with the data, and here's how you can delete your data if you don't want us to have it anymore. So it's great use case, that ridiculous results with what they're doing. So just a couple of examples there, and just kind of leading into why you kind of need to be thinking about this. Build it, buy it, whatever. It's coming, kind of. It's a lot of the largest companies are really focused on this. So it's not just because all the cool kids are doing it. It's, and Richard's going to talk about this in just a second, but gotta love Benioff, but it's this, other companies are doing it, starting to do it, and it's a little bit of that time to market to create that really personalized experience for the customer journey. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it back over to you, sir, to talk about why.
Talk about why, or talk about what your options are.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, close enough. Shouldn't have had that extra glass of wine. Okay. So maybe we've convinced you by now that you absolutely need to have something like this. And the question then becomes, do you take this on yourself in your organization, or do you go out and find a vendor that does this, that operates in this space? So the temptation is that your IT department or your programmers say, hey, look, this is a piece of cake. All these things are here. We can just go out. We can talk to Facebook. We can talk to Google+. They have little widgets. We'll put those on there. We'll get the data. We'll store it, and we'll do. And no problem. We'll handle this. So that's certainly an option. Some companies do opt to do that, but building in-house is something that we've measured as being a more expensive long-term. Not only do you need to build that, but now you need to commit resources to maintaining it. And social providers have a great way of changing their APIs, modifying what they're doing, and making it, creating work for developers. So that increases expense. It's time consuming. So, you are going to be waiting a little while for somebody to be able to build something like this. Trust us from a group that has built something like this. And finally, it poses many challenges. So you need to become aware of what the privacy laws are and how to maintain compliance with that. You need to become aware and very, very expert in security. Make sure that you're storing things in an adequate way. There's going to be hosting. Where are you going to host this solution? Is this going to be something you host on your premises, or do you get a cloud provider and host in the cloud? These are all decisions that you need to make. How do you maintain it? What are the APIs that you interact with other systems? Who writes the integrations to other systems? So these are considerations that need to be made if you decide to do a build in-house. Now, the measure that we've seen in the market is that once you start building in-house, you'll be 953 days away from having it ready to go. So 2019 sounds like a wonderful time. And will be for your solution. Now, your alternative is to find a vendor like ourselves and some others and have us manage the customer identity management platform. We will provide the database. We will provide the services, the code that you need to interact. We will interact with the social providers for you and change that data into something that you can use. And this will give you a much faster time to market, 100 days versus the 953, and some of our implementations go from 30 days. The complicated ones go to 100, but within a few months you'll be ready to go, and you'll be really gaining the benefits of some of the things that we've been talking about today. So again, we really want to emphasize the security and privacy element of this. People are concerned about security, and if they have any concern, they won't use your system. A SIAM system that is working appropriately will have data secured both in rest, when it's just being stored in a database, and in motion as it's being communicated across the various systems. The access keys will only provide the right access to the right data. So if somebody has a set of credentials that can get access to the user profile, you don't want to give them access to all the data in the user profile. Let's say, for instance, that you have an ad server that you want to interact with, and you want to serve at your content website. You want to be able to serve ads for people on that site that are personalized to them. And so what you want to do is share just pieces of interests and other psychographic data, maybe a little bit of demographic, like their age group and their gender, and the fact that they like, which movies they like. Then you send that to the ad server, and that ad server will come back with an ad that might be relevant to them. And you don't want to share their email address though with the ad company. You don't want to share their other personal information, names. It's not necessary. So the important thing there is to just give the ad server only the data they need to be able to do what they do. And of course, system availability is going to be important. People log on all the time. The system just needs to be able to authenticate users anytime. So this is ensured through fault tolerance. This is ensured through hosting through various areas. You need to have a solution around that. Privacy. So your solution should meet privacy standards such as COPPA, and of course New Zealand has these secure privacy principles that exist that say, hey, the user knows exactly what data you are collecting about them. The user knows how you're going to use that data. The user has the option, or the customer has the option of removing that data at any time, and so make sure that your solution is compliant with that. And it looks like we were on steroids. And it's time for questions.
Questions.
Love any questions or any kind of people challenging certain things. That's always good to hear as well. So.
Questions, comments,
Yeah.
insights?
Trying to think.
Interested in knowing what it's like to travel all over?
Jet lag. I'm sure you're aware.
The website personalization around content, do you work with any particular CMSs, or any particular CMSs work better than others?
You want to take that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there must be as many CMSs as there are organizations out there, honestly. There's dozens. And our company has identified two of them that we've created special integrations with, WordPress and Drupal. And so those are ones we see very, very commonly. That does not mean that we can't interact with others, and this is the same for most SIAM organizations. There's two pieces to that. So number one is to replace the CMS's existing registration and sign-in feature with a centralized one. So why would you do that? Well, your CMS may not be the only system through which your consumer interacts with you, through which your customer interacts. The CMS may not host the web app, the mobile application, right? The CMS may not host your support application. So if you only manage that identity in the CMS, you're going to get into the segmented identities again. So that's where central identity comes in. So yeah, in terms of the CMSs, we interact with anyone that comes in. We will replace that, and then we will synchronize the data. So not only do we replace the login, and the login will go to our system instead of to the CMS. We will then get the data that the CMS needs for personalization and integrate with the CMS, send that data back to that so that it can be leveraged further in the personalization sections. Great question.
Is the social data refreshed in the back end? So you brought in your social media profile information from Facebook. It's in your database. How often is that data refreshed?
Right. So the question is, how often is the data refreshed that you've collected on the users? Great question. So, and the way that the systems normally work is that the data is refreshed every time the user comes to your site or interacts with you. So each time they authenticate. Now, with that authentication process, you get a token, and that token represents that person's authentication with that social provider. And you can write code that will use that token against the social provider's API and get the data at any time. And I think we've done something like that, and we have a product around that. So you can be refreshing even when the user is not, or the customer is not interacting with your system. It's a funny thing coming up with terms for the people that interact with your system. I think it's computer software and drug dealers that call their customers users. Yeah. But so, I don't know. You call yours users, customers, viewers. Yeah, every industry has their own term for who pays them money. So yeah, users. All right.
I was just going to, on that topic, a request we get from certain businesses, to your point, is, God, we would really love to know when a user goes from, their Facebook status goes from single to engaged, right? Businesses are like, oh yes, this would be a great time to serve them very specific ads. So it's things like that when you see that change, gotta be not creepy about it, but it's interesting. That one stuck out for a lot of our customers.
Yeah, I think it is important to be subtle, not like next time they log in, congratulations on your engagement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Question?
Yeah, I think I have a question. Kind of just separating SIAM from the use of social login.
Uh-huh.
Because I've actually had experience of testing social login versus like a traditional email capture form. And in my experience, what happens is that when you make it easier for people to sign in, you're basically lowering the friction. So like it's easier for them.
Yeah.
The problem with lowering friction is that your leads are just less qualified. You know, for example, for a product that you know that's really important. I think in my experience, what we've seen was that there's also a lot of people who like right now, a lot of Facebook users are being actually smarter about it. That they just use Facebook for things that they don't want to get email notifications from. So they would have, and it can be intentional or not, where people would have two separate email addresses, one for Facebook and one that they actually check. And what we've seen is that although there are higher signups using the social login, in the back end they don't buy because it's still we're not being able to collect the emails, or they're using Facebook to avoid all of this, because like right now everybody is using a social login. And I think my question is that in your experience, is it the same as well? It's the same trend, or you're seeing a different kind of experience at the back end?
Right. Do you want to?
Well, I would just take a couple of...
Because I have some ideas, but...
Well, I would say it so depends on the nature of your business. We work with a lot of companies. Banks and financial institutions will actually use social logon to enable people to apply for credit cards, which sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it's that same process of, hey, we're going to lower the barrier of entry here. We're going to take pieces of data and auto-populate a registration form that you're then going to have to go and fill out. So it's kind of a happy medium, so it's just case-by-case basis. But we've got so many best practices around that, but that's a really interesting observation that you're seeing that.
Populate a form and then you can write on the top and correct it. So I was going to say, do we know
Perfect.
with people's profiles how accurate the data is? Like, I wouldn't change any of my statuses personally for a long time.
Right.
Probably because of the reason that I don't want Facebook to know
Sure.
every element of my life. So I
Yep.
think it would be relatively out of date. But I just wonder if you're using social registration, are you collecting current and
Yeah.
are you saying that when you use it, it will pre-populate and there's the friction, then you can personally update it?
That's That's exactly right. Right. You can do that. And so it still gives the user options to go and say, oh man, I haven't used that. My dog's name is not Spot. I have a different dog now or something. Go and fix that in the registration process. And then also, as part of Facebook, it returns, and several of the other identity providers, social identity providers like LinkedIn, it returns a validated email address. So you can't put in a fake one. I mean, it has to be validated by the user. But yeah, absolutely, a lot of companies are using that to, again, auto-populate some of the fields of data, but enabling the user to be able to correct those as they see fit. Is that anything on that?
Yeah, that's right. So as you're mentioning, there's going to be a segment of people out there that are going to be clever about this. And it's obviously there's not a lot of effort and there's not much effort to use that to create a new Facebook account. And now I'm a 23-year-old girl that lives in London, even though I'm me. But and then there's nothing that stops them from using that as their login. So with social login, there's two objectives. There's two points of value that you get from that. The first point of value is that you've as you mentioned, you've reduced the friction to get them access to your site. So they don't have to create an account. They don't have to create a username and a password or give their email address and a password. And that's something that, when you have 38 of these things that are out there, you don't want to create another one. And that's a security hole because, of course, everybody's password is password123 on all 37 of their accounts. So once they're hacked, it's over for them, right? So the first value is that you've made it easier for them to get access into your system. Now you can be lazy about how, the second value is, of course, the data that you can gather from that. And you can be lazy about how you approach this and simply say, you know what? The Facebook data, the data that I get from Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram or Google+, that's the data I'm going to use, and that's the user. And simply be content with that. But that's not that may not achieve what your needs are. So there's two approaches to that. One is using the social login to pre-populate a final registration form and have them confirm it or adjust it as necessary. The second thing is to do a concept called progressive profiling. And that is to gather the information that you want at a first-person level rather than relying on information that was given to a third party for that. So if you're gonna leverage information, if knowing what gender they are is very important to you, if knowing what their interest is in XYZ is important to you, then I would suggest that it's a best practice to find a way to collect that yourself versus relying on what the social provider has. So yeah, it's an excellent point, and it's kind of, in a way, I feel like it's one of the things that is easy to gloss over, or people can get excited about. Oh, great! I can put Facebook on my webpage, and they can log in, and now I'll get tons of data, and I'll be rich and run around, and my market, I'll sell more widgets, and that's just not the case. You can't just rely on that.
Do you have an example of that progressive collection that you're talking about?
A progressive profiling?
Yes, so for example, after they've already signed on to your business, like what are some campaigns that you can do to collect? I would assume probably the same data.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you a few examples. So in one case, let's say that you're Channel 4 and you're interested in knowing what types of television shows, what genres of television shows. So they put in a progressive profiling question that would randomly pop up for them when the user logs in. You don't want to, every time they log in, you don't want to present them with a pop-up question. But in this case, after a certain n number of logins, up comes a pop-up and it says, hey, what's your favorite TV shows? So this is an active question that they're asking. What kinds of TV shows? I like sci-fi and I like dramas and I like reality junkie TV. So they fill that in, and that little piece of information is then saved to profile. Then somewhere else along the line, maybe they ask, what time do you enjoy watching television at? I really like watching prime time, or I really like, or maybe they ask, where do you watch TV? On what device do you watch TV? I will usually watch it on mobile, or I usually watch it in my living room. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is through passive means. In other words, if your viewer or your customer is interacting with your content or your products, you can gather that information and hey, this person keeps watching these TV shows, or they keep clicking on Brexit articles, so they must be interested in Brexit, and basically identify kind of an interest from that passive interaction.
That behavioral targeting.
Right, and build a profile that way. So and then there's so many options. Your creativity really is the limit of what you could do. You could have a little poll and say, who do you support in the next American election? Do you like Hillary Clinton, or you like the really dumb guy? So now you get an idea of maybe their politics, and you can assess that. So those are some ways.